Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Art of MMA. I'm Mike Ginn. That's the mechanic, Brandon Catino. Joining us this week, Cage My IQ's Dan Bakley. We're going to be talking about everything UFC 280. Is the fix in? We'll talk about that in Battleground. Also, previewing Bellator 287 and UFC Vegas 63 coming up this weekend. Of course, before we get to all that, check out FightersFirst.shop. Take care of the business of things. Let our apparel be a part of your story. Got some great new collections on there. Kung Lee, Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. Of course, the Mechanic Collection, the Cage My IQ Collection, and the Art of MMA collections all on there. Go shop. Go support your boys. FightersFirst.shop. Dan, what's up, buddy? How you been? You haven't been on the show in a while. How you feeling?
I'm feeling busy. Just doing a lot of content, Glad to be back on, though. It's been a while.
We had to get some more expertise, so I didn't look like the only crazy person talking about 280 today. Brandon, how you feeling on this victory week?
Feeling good.
We can't really talk about too much victory week because Mr. Philly down there has a team going to the World Series and his Eagles are undefeated. I guess we could talk about the 76ers, but that's about it.
Hey, the Giants are doing good, so
victory week.
Giants are doing good. You saying, man? I just got back from Chicago. It was nice out there. Yeah, thank you. City was nice. City was nice. I liked it. It was good. I would definitely go back. I might go back next year for a wrestling event. You never know.
Chicago's great. Just don't go in the cold time. I've been there during the winter, and that's not fun. It's not fun during the winter when that wind whips off the lake and you're like freezing ice cold. During the summer though, it's amazing. Great city. Just avoid the gunshots and you're good to go. Gentlemen, today we got a lot to talk about. I do want to get your thoughts on a couple things before we hop into the show. Dan actually brought it to my attention. I had actually missed it, and this is right up your alley, Brandon. Coming up New Year's Eve, it's going to be Bellator and Ryzen set for a big show. They announced a few names. They haven't said any matchups. You're going to have Pitbull involved, AJ McKee, Archuleta, Horiguchi, to name a few. Dan, you're our guest. What do you think about this big show coming up?
I think it's just something to get eyes on. I believe Ryzen in America. It's going to be a nice show. Of course, they've had a working relationship. That's basically how Horiguchi came over. He came over for Ryzen. You've had Patricky, who did the Ryzen tournament a few years ago, and a couple other guys, I believe Darren Caldwell, a few other guys. A lot of talent has gone back and forth. So it's a nice working relationship where they're going to do a nice card on New Year's. I'm all for it.
Brandon, what are your thoughts on the big card? Think it's going to be a fun show?
Yeah, I was going to say, man, dude, this is what happens when you have MMA promotions do cross promotions. This is what we want. This is what we like as fans, as combat sports fans. This is great.
I don't think of it as cross promotion, and I know it is, but it kind of reminds me of wrestling's Forbidden Door, right? Like you're working with a promotion overseas. Like this isn't the American promotions cross promoting. It's like them going over to a foreign land and be like, all right, cool. It's like New Japan and AEW, right? Like it's just kind of like we're working with promoters from a different country. So it's kind of like working together, but I don't look at it as like the Kayla Cyborg matchup we're looking for, right? Like it's a step in the right direction, though. I think it'd be a very fun show, especially over in Japan on New Year's Eve. So I think that'd be cool. And then the other thing I wanted to mention, poor Dada 5000. He could not get licensed in a bare knuckle event, not BKFC. It was like BYB Extreme or something that was actually taking place in Tampa coming up in November. And ironically, Brandon, this one actually is in Tampa. I know I mentioned how they used the Tampa name last time, but this one actually is at the fairgrounds in Tampa. He could not get licensed. It was going to be his first fight since the Kimbo fight officially, but the 45-year-old who famously died on his way to the hospital and had to be resuscitated could not get licensed even in Florida. So I don't think we'll be seeing Dada 5000 anytime soon. Guys, let's go ahead and jump into this show. UFC 280, the big event that we had been waiting for. We had a lot go down. New champion, a lot of controversy, and Bilal Muhammad almost got jumped by the entire city of Philadelphia, including Paul Felter. So we'll talk about all that, but let's go ahead and jump straight into the main event. Islam Makhachev, brand new lightweight champion. Of course, the belt was technically vacant because Oliveira misweighed his last fight, but everybody kind of looked at Oliveira as the champ coming in. Dan, you're a guest. I'll let you talk about it first. What happened in that fight, and what were your thoughts on it?
It was basically simple to me. Yeah, he didn't respect. I felt like he didn't respect the striking of Islam Makhachev, and Makhachev landed some good shots on him that led to him getting taken down. And he was just able to, in the second round, to sub him. It's basically plain and simple with that. With me, it's just that he didn't respect the striking game, and I felt like he didn't use enough of those leg kicks that he's used to using to keep the distance, and he allowed Islam to get into his space and do what he wanted.
Now, Brandon, I'm going to reserve some of my thoughts for this fight because I have a big thing to say about this entire card on our Battleground segment, but I want to go ahead and get your thoughts on this whole thing and the brand new champion.
I mean, it was a good fight. Makhachev, man, had a smart game plan. Like I said, the thing is, where usually most people, when they go up against Oliveira, they return the same gunfire. Like Oliveira comes at you straight forward, you come back straight forward. Look at what happened with Michael Chandler. Look what happened with Justin Gaethje. But here with Makhachev, Oliveira tried to come in, with that switch knee or always going forward. But Makhachev didn't just stay there and try to bang with him. He moved around, made angles, used his footwork. Popped him with his jab, and that's why he was able to catch him. He timed his takedowns very well. Also, and then also too, when they got in the clinch, usually in the clinch, that was one of Oliveira's specialty. But again, Makhachev didn't just let him dominate. He worked his knees as well in there, and also too, that's when he got his trips. So that way he could get on top, have his control. And yeah, man, it was just a good fight. Like saying Oliveira said it in the post-fight press conference, just basically saying like, hey, it wasn't my night, and sometimes this is how it goes.
Yeah, personally, I thought Makhachev had a good game plan. I thought he came in, he didn't put himself in a lot of bad positions. Even when he went to the ground, he pushed him up against the cage, didn't give Oliveira a lot of chances to swing his legs up and do different submissions. I thought he did really good, and he did what he was supposed to do. He came in, he lived up to the hype, he got the title. I'm as of the conclusion of rewatching most of the main card that the whole damn fight card was fixed. So I'll talk about that later. I'll tell you why, but especially the last three fights of this card. But that said, Makhachev came in, he lived up to the hype. There was a lot going around. Obviously, the Dagestani guys are very popular in all of UAE and Abu Dhabi. They're not very far away. They're kind of like the local kids, kind of adopted almost. And they do a lot of work with Brave and some other organizations over there in that region with Bahrain and stuff. So he was very heavily cheered. They booed Charles Oliveira, which was a new experience for Charles. He's always been the lovable guy, right? But Charles didn't show up that night. He did not show up that night. He got beat by an arm triangle that, while everybody knows is a very dangerous move, can cut your circulation off very quickly. Makhachev didn't even have his hips over. He didn't even get his hips over. So either his clinch is that tight up top, or leave it up to people's interpretation on that one. Over in the co-main event, another kind of stinker of a fight because TJ evidently has been hurt since April. And that brings up another subject of not just like there's not much analysis on this fight, right? Like right off the beginning, his arm popped out and Sterling did what exactly Sterling was supposed to do. He took advantage of it, beat him up and props to TJ for lasting into the second round because it reminded me of that Aaron Pico fight where he fought like the whole round with his shoulder popped out just like a month ago. And there was not really much to that. Brandon, what were your thoughts on the whole thing, the whole situation, not just the fight?
I mean, hey, man, somebody in TJ's corner, got to let them know. I mean, if they co-signed on it, they co-signed on it, which to me they shouldn't. Like I say, you basically cheated, the fans out of a fight because we thought everybody's coming in here. I mean, we all know when you get ready for a fight, there are going to be bumps, there are going to be bruises. But I mean, when your shoulders popping out 20 times over here, that's not good. Like saying you're going to need some.
Even Cub Swanson said he trained with him like a month ago, and he couldn't use his left arm at all.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know why he thought that he can go in there and win a fight with one arm. He's saying, Aljamain Sterling is no scrub. He's no bum. So I'm saying he's the champion for a reason. And like I said, Aljamain Sterling went in there, did what he was supposed to do, and got the job done.
Dan, I'll ask you even a further question. Why did the UFC allow him to fight? And Dana White sitting there playing dumb, like, oh, if he got hurt in April, I should have known about it. How do you not know about it? Your co-main event of a major card. How do you not know one of your players is coming in hurt?
I believe it's because of how they check them. They don't, with the doctors and everything, they don't check it like that. All they check for is like if they're on steroids or anything. They don't like look at it and look, oh, this guy has a pop shoulder, even though he said that it's happened 20 times. It's with Dana White, it's all about how he is then. And if he's looking good, the doctors okay him the day before. I believe that says the day before the fight. And then the day of, then he's good to go. Because what are they going to do in that situation? Co-main event, they're not going to be able to put Volkanovski there because he was moving up and he was basically at 155. And that's
they had both O'Malley and Jan sitting right there that would have jumped at a title shot versus fighting each other. Yeah,
that they could have done that, but then who's going to fight? But then who's going to fight the other? So you put Jan up there against Sterling again. It would be O'Malley. I think they would have just kept him there. And it's one of those situations where it's like you take the chance that hopefully it doesn't pop out, but then it popped out right away because the first thing that happened was he got rushed and then he got bummed into the cage and then taken down. And
he tried to brace himself on the ground and immediately popped.
Yeah, and then it popped out right away. It's just one of those things that happens. It sucks for him because he basically couldn't use his one arm, and then it was basically defenseless. I thought it should have been stopped in the first round because he wasn't defending himself for a while, but the ref was kind of lenient with what was going on.
Well, yeah, Mark Goddard knew. TJ told him before the fight, "Hey, my shoulder might pop out. Give me a chance."
Yeah.
And Mark did. Mark gave him a chance to get through it. They got to pop back in between the rounds. Went right back out. This is another thing that makes me wonder about this card because you're going to tell me legitimately that Dana White had no clue that from April until November or October, Dana White had no clue that TJ Dillashaw was compromised. All the fighting people that go in, the sparring partners, the people that go in and out of camps, they can keep a secret. All those people, all of them can keep a secret, but yet Mark Goddard, the referee, knew. And I know this fight was commissioned by the UFC because there's no athletic commission overseas. Same as in fights in Brazil and stuff like that. But you're going to tell me that Dana had no idea. I don't believe that for a second. I think he didn't want to lose his co-main event. TJ said he'd tough it out. And here we are. Aljamain looked great. It wasn't Aljamain's fault. He didn't do nothing wrong. He went in, did what he's supposed to do. He destroyed a guy who's been talking mad shit. And there it is. For Sterling's point of view, I find it hard to sit there and him to go on the next day on Ariel and be like, I'm looking for, the UFC is looking for a last hope of someone. Maybe it's Henry Cejudo. Maybe it's this and that. And the truth be told, and we kind of forgot to talk about this for a second for Islam, so we'll go back to that in a second. But the truth be told is we know Henry Cejudo is probably next for Sterling because I don't think they're ready, even though O'Malley got jumped all the way up to number 1. I don't think they're ready for O'Malley versus Sterling yet. Brandon, who do you think's next for Sterling? Is it O'Malley or is it Henry Cejudo?
Hey, Dana White said that the winner would be, the winner of the Mali Yan fight. But then again, Dana White does say a lot of things. To me, the most deserving person is Chito Vera. I think Chito Vera does deserve the title shot. But if it is going to be Henry Cejudo, it's going to be Henry Cejudo. But to me, Dana White has never, ever said anything about Henry Cejudo. To me, he does want to give Henry
he did mention him a lot after the show. He mentioned Henry Cejudo a lot after the show.
But I mean, but like I said, we shall see what happens.
And Dan, in the post fight, Daniel Cormier, he's fed the things that he's supposed to ask about.
Yeah,
Daniel Cormier mentioned Henry Cejudo. So who do you think's next?
I don't think Henry Cejudo is next because I feel like he's going to have to fight somebody and win before he gets the title. Kind of like when TJ Dillashaw got suspended, he came back. They made him fight Corey Sandhagen right away, and then he earned the title shot by beating that because he was out for so long. This guy's been out even longer. I think a year longer than that. I think he's going to have to fight somebody to earn the title shot, and I feel like a guy that it could be against would be somebody like Merab right there, who's kind of sitting there. And in this situation where Merab has to fight somebody, I feel like fighting back, even though there's been word that he wants that Ricky Simone fight because he wants to get that loss revenge. So it could be him, but if he goes for Ricky Simone like it is, I could see him fighting the Cheeto.
Merab's in a tough spot because he won't fight his boy.
Yeah.
And he's in a top 5 spot, so he's got to keep fighting. And yeah, Henry Cejudo would be a great fight. Cheeto would be a great fight. I do know personally, I think Sterling and Cejudo got it kind of lined up. You know, they had thing where they were going over each other's house, interviewing each other, kind of like having fun, but at the same time being competitive. I think that's kind of been in the works for a while. And it's different circumstances. TJ came off a drug suspension. Cejudo walked off as a champion. I think they're totally different circumstances. I think Dana's been pissed off at Cejudo for a long time, but I think enough time has passed. He went through the drug program. He's eligible as of October. So I think we see Cejudo personally. The one thing I do want to jump back to real quick is what's next for Makhachev. Charles Oliveira sat there and told Dana, he said, I did everything you asked. I fought everybody you asked me. I deserve at least a rematch. We know waiting in the wings is Alexander Volkanovski coming up for a division. We know Beneil Dariush right there is deserving of a shot. Brandon, who gets the next shot at Makhachev?
It's going to be Volkanovski, man. They already set it up. I mean, it should be Dariush, but I want to say they're going to do Volkanovski, and they're going to do it, I guess.
Is that going to happen in Australia?
Yeah, that's what I think so. I think that's where they're setting it up for Perth.
Dan, is that what you think too? Think it's done? It's locked?
I think it's locked and loaded already. They had him come out after the match and do a stare down with Makhachev. I think that's going to happen. And then there's 2 options for Oliveira. There's him against Dariush, or there's that fight with Connor that he wants. But there's
I don't think Connor can make 155 anymore.
Yeah. But there's rumors that Connor's moving on welterweight if he ever comes back. So
Connor's running around looking like a light heavyweight right now.
So I guess your only option there would be Dariush, unless there's another fight that he wants, unless he moves down. But I doubt it.
Do you think
he barely can make lightweight?
Dariush said he's fighting anybody. He doesn't care if he gets the title shot or not. He's going to keep fighting and winning. You think we can see Dariush and Oliveira, and the winner gets the winner of Volkanovski and Makhachev?
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see that happening.
That'd be a good setup. Good for everybody because then it kind of gives us a new number 1 contender. I know normally we only speak about the main and co-main, but I do want to get these guys' thoughts on it. Sean O'Malley, Peter Yan. For one, I'm gonna get probably blackballed by the UFC for this. I have no doubt that fight was fixed. I have no doubt that, and I watched Pride. Like I watched Pride fights. Like I have no doubt that fight was fixed. I have no doubt that there's some ass kissers in the MMA journalistic community, notably some from MMA Junkie that came out and said, "Oh, I rewatched the fight and I could see how O'Malley won this and that." 6 takedowns, over 5 minutes in time control, and the biggest round people keep pointing to is the 3rd round where O'Malley landed that knee that busted Yan up. That was one. No joke. Like I counted it, 30 seconds of control and winning the round from Peter O'Malley. 4.5 minutes of Sean O'Malley winning that round. 4.5 minutes of Peter Yan winning that round with takedowns, kicks, punches, you name it. Damage is a large part of what we look at for judging fights. Dan, is there any way that Sean O'Malley won this fight?
I don't think so, because the way I scored it was 2nd round, there's no debate. I had it as Peter Yan.
And that could be at 10-8.
3rd round, I gave it to O'Malley because he had triple the damage that Yan had in that round. So I gave it to him. The first round's were the one that's in debate. O'Malley only had a few more significant strikes than he did, but then Peter Yan had more total strikes. But then Peter Yan also had the takedown and 1.5 minutes of control time on top of it. So for me, with everything else kind of similar, I go to the wrestling part of it as the tiebreaker, and I give it to Jan. Like, I thought at first Jan won it easily. I think it is a little bit closer, but it's kind of hard to debate to me, to be honest, when he gets that takedown. To me, that takedown was very key. A lot of people are like, well, he didn't really control him that long, only for 30, 40 seconds. I'm like, well, that's a long time to control a guy on the mat. And then especially when they were kind of 50-50 almost with the striking and damage, I felt like, too, because they both landed a nice shot on each other in that round. I felt like that was the X factor, was the takedown.
Brandon, I think most people miss that. Sean O'Malley would land a big shot each round, but each time Peter Yan would land one right back. What were your thoughts on the fight? What were your thoughts on the decision?
I thought Yan won the fight. I think I had him definitely winning the first and second round. Third round, maybe could have gave it to O'Malley, maybe. But I pretty much thought Yan won. But again, man, like I said, I'm not a judge. I'm not there. Sometimes it can be different. The angle that they get. Like, remember, we're at home. We get to see all the angles. They're there. There's only certain things that maybe they can see. Also, too, they get the sound. They get their cage sounds, so they can really kind of see what shots hurt, or sounded like they hurt, or sounded like they didn't hurt. But yeah, like I said, man, I mean, I thought Yan won it, but again, I'm not a judge.
6 takedowns, over 5 minutes of control. And each round there was a takedown. Each round there was control. I had 30-27, and that's not to say Sean O'Malley didn't show up. Sean O'Malley showed up and fought his ass off. But from round one with the leg kicks, and you can say significant strikes, that's such a misleading term because you like hitting somebody with a leg kick, hitting somebody with a jab. Sometimes they don't show up as significant strikes, but they are significant, especially when you have somebody like Sean O'Malley with the leg damage. Look, Peter O'Malley came in. I'll give Sean O'Malley credit. He made Peter O'Malley a wrestler. I'm sorry, I keep saying Peter O'Malley. Peter Yan a wrestler. It's like last week with Sean Brady. I kept saying O'Brady. Anyway, but Peter Yan won this fight. And there's anybody with 2 eyes can see Peter Yan won this fight. And you talk about cage side, how can you not see somebody laying on top of somebody for most of the fight? Whether there's damage or not, and let's be real, Peter Yan was throwing punches. He was throwing elbows. Was he connecting? Not necessarily. Sean O'Malley did a great job of getting back up and using some of his ability to get back up, which we didn't know he had. This was a good fight for Sean O'Malley to say, hey, I can hang with the top guys in the division. But this was not a win for Sean O'Malley by any way, shape, or form. This is 2 fights in a row that Peter Yan has been on the losing end of a tough decision. You can give him the Sterling loss because Sterling did control him really strongly for 2 rounds to the point where you might even have given Sterling 10-8 rounds when he was beating him. But Peter Yan is the king of adjusting in fights. And as the fight goes on, there's no question. The third round that people want to give Sean O'Malley credit for was really 30 seconds. 30 seconds of a knee and following up trying to land on Peter Yan. If that's the case, are you going to give Nate Diaz the win over Leon Edwards because he had one moment in the 5th round? No. Like, this is not one. You don't judge it based on what you feel who won the fight. You base it on rounds. And the truth is, there is no question who won this fight. Everybody can go back and see, like, everybody who goes back is looking for a way to justify the decision that already happened. They're not going back to try to find a way to say what really happened. Like I went back and watched the fight on mute. No announcers, no hype. And I had no doubt it was 30-27 Peter Yan. I could give you a little bit of the first round because it wasn't an eventful round. But I can't give you the third round because truth is, Peter Yan still controlled the fight, controlled the round. It reminds me of the Pacquiao-Tim Bradley fight back in boxing where Tim Bradley won the fight and everybody was like, how? Because Manny Pacquiao only flurried for 40 seconds each round where Tim Bradley would do the work for 2 minutes and 20 seconds of each round. That's how you score a fight. Who does the whole round, not just 30 seconds. Leave a comment at home. I really want to hear your thoughts on this one. Also on the card, we talked about Darush getting the job over Gamrot. Very close fight, very tough fight. I thought it was closer than the judges made it, but good fight. Fierro with a big win over Kayla Chikagian. Definitely stamped her ticket to possibly fight in Valentina sometime soon. I would love to see her and Grasso. Yeah, I'd love to see them match up if neither one wants or if they do the super fight with Valentina and they're waiting, or the rematch with Talia, right? It's going to be a lot of stuff going on.
Well, Manoon just said she wants to fight one more time before she goes for the title, too. So.
Put her and Grasso in there. Let them go.
Yep.
They fought a week apart, so they're both in the same timetable. Bilal Muhammad with a big win over Sean Brady. He showed his striking skills. He stayed away from the takedowns. He stayed away from the jiu-jitsu and just tore him up on the feet. Brady had some big shots in there as well. I'd love to know if there was any altercations backstage after that fight, because he got to the point where he was talking so much trash about Philly, even on mic. Paul Felder was like, I'll get in there and kick your ass myself. You keep Philly out your mouth. And I know very well Ryan Cafaro was there for Caitlin Chikagian. I know, I believe Eddie Alvarez might have been backstage. Jonathan Webb was backstage. The whole Sean Brady camp. There's a lot of tough Philly ex-fighters in that Sean Brady camp. I would be curious to see how that went across. Of course, Bilal Muhammad was smart, and he surrounded himself with the entire Dagestani team. So who knows? Maybe they could have recruited Chimaev to join the Philly team, since he wanted to fight the Dagestani guys so bad. Chaparral with another great win over Muradov. Brandon's pick, Krylov, got the win over Ozdemir. Did really good. Nurmagomedov beat Godsey, which I thought was a toss-up fight. He looked great. Petrosian with another big win over Dobson. Makhachev over Gordon. And Carol Rosa with the win over Landsberg by majority decision. Brandon, what were some of your other highlights on the card?
Really nothing, man. I mean, I like that Krylov fight because I picked Krylov to get the job done, and he did. So that was a good fight. Dan, any other highlights on the card that stood out for you?
I was happy that my guy Kai Belayo got the win. He looked impressive again. Get my guy a top 15 fight now. He's earned it. I feel like he took advantage of Muradov. I felt like he controlled that. He got hit a couple of times, but for the most part, he controlled him on the mat a little bit. He outstruck him. He kept it within distance. This guy is a problem.
I think when it comes to him, they're definitely giving him the push. Like, you know, he's got the Ultimate Fighter and he's got this and that. I think they're kind of pacing him a little bit, but I think top 15 is probably potential next fight. I just want to see what they do with Bilal Muhammad. Like, take the whole personality and take all the extra stuff out of it. The dude keeps winning. The only fight he didn't win was the Leon Edwards. The Leon Edwards eye poke was the only fight he didn't win. Him calling out Leon Edwards, I think, is a mistake because Leon was controlling that fight until he poked him in the eye. But I think he's stuck in no man's land as well. Like, you know,
you got Burns and Burns and
Masvidal.
Masvidal supposed to take place in Brazil.
Thompson's lined up. There's a bunch of fighters all booked.
He's lined up, and then they're trying to do Chimaev and Colby Covington to be the co-main event of the Edwards Usman 3 in England. They're trying to make that the co-main event just in case somebody drops off.
I think Muhammad's going to be stuck waiting until the spring or summer before another fight because I just think everybody's booked. So
I think what's going to happen is I bet the UFC's hoping that Shavkat beats Neil Magny, and then it'll be like Bilal fight Shavkat, and then that's what's going to happen, like you said, in the spring. If Shavkat,
I don't think anybody wants Shavkat. Shavkat's going to run through. I think he's on his way up to the top.
But I think that's the only option that Muhammad has.
Might be. Let's switch gears. Let's talk about Battleground. Fight fixing. UFC 280 had a lot of question marks. We've seen it over the years with MMA judging. I guess I could have called this MMA judging part like 952. We talk about MMA judging so many times over the last few years, especially. You can go back to Pride, where we found out years later that there were a lot of fight fixing going on in Pride. Rampage kind of spilled the beans on a lot of times. They would approach him. The Yakuza and other people would approach him about, you know, I got money on this guy. Let's go take a dive and we'll cut you a piece. It's not brand new. Wanderlei Silva said it about Pride. Fight fixing was a big deal back in those days, especially in Japan. And early days of UFC. UFC is very heavily regulated in the United States, but there always are a lot of question marks when they go, and they are the commission, whether it's Brazil, Abu Dhabi, China, a number of other places they travel to. When they are the commission, there's less rules. I look at things of like, why wasn't there a physical for TJ Dillashaw a couple weeks before the fight. Once they're licensed, there's nobody that gives them a physical, and they're basically held up to their own accord of showing up for the fight. But once again, this was UFC doing the licensing. So you check them out when you announce the fight, but you're not checking them out between April and October when anything can happen. Why did Charles Oliveira lightly tap out to an arm triangle choke when the hips weren't even floated over? And of course, the Peter Yan fight, there's so many question marks about 280. Brandon, I love your face, so I'm going to start with you. Is it possible that fight fixing still exists in 2022 in a major promotion like UFC?
I mean, the reason why my face like because I'm just listening to what you're saying, and I have questions about how do you. I guess my thing is about.
I'm the least conspiracy theory person in the world. I think they're all full of shit, but this time I saw it.
Because I'm going with one, the TJ Dillashaw one. How do you know he didn't have a physical? Like, where is it that he didn't have a physical?
If he had a physical, wouldn't it show up? If his shoulder was that shredded that his arm could pop out every time. So when a physician is lifting his arm up and he doesn't wince, he doesn't do anything, it's just normal.
I mean, one, when you do a physical, they don't lift your arm up. You lift your arm up yourself, and then they just usually ask you a question. But there's really nothing. There's nothing like that where they're tapping on your shoulder, moving it around. So I mean, he could have finagled his way around it. But to me, it's like you're always gonna get a physical, but then also too, usually you have a pre-fight medical anyway as well. But usually that pre-fight medical.
I meant to ask you during the talk how because you've been through quite a few of them. How up to the fight week, do they do a pre-fight medical, or is it like weeks before?
No, you have a physical before your fight. You send that in whenever it is that you get it done, and then the day of the fight, they have a doctor check you. But really, all he's really checking is just how your heart rate is and your blood pressure. That's really it. Things
that can cause a lawsuit.
I mean, yeah, I guess to let me make sure that you're fine. But other than that, like, I mean, they're not having you. I mean, I think there are people like, I mean, they will have you like do a squat or something like that because they do check to make sure, you know, that you can move around. But other than that, like, that's it. And then
so back to the question, is fight fixing still possible in 2022?
I mean, I guess anything is possible, but I don't think those fights were fixed. Because even going back to your whole Makhachev thing, I've seen people finish submissions from the mount with an arm triangle. You don't always have to hop off to the side.
I know that's possible.
That's the common thing where people think that you always have to be on top. But no, I mean off to the side. But no, but you can finish it on top. If you can finish it, you can finish it.
My thing with that was, and I'll get to Dan in just a second. My thing with that was that when he tapped out, it was like the lightest tap. He was just like, "Okay, you got me, haha." And it wasn't like he was in pain or he was getting choked out. It was just simply like, okay.
Because man, dude, you gotta remember, dude. Like this is why I think, man, you gotta think about, man, dude. When you know you're caught, you're caught. That's it. Oliveira's a smart guy. He knows how jiu-jitsu rolls. He knows like, yo, somebody's got me. They got me. That's it. It's not like oh, every time somebody has a submission on you, know you can get out of it, and then there's times when you know you can't. You're stuck. So he knew, hey man, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not gonna black out, you know, for this. I'm just gonna tap. Fight's over.
Dan, what are your thoughts?
On top of that, he took damage before that, so that's something that you got to factor into it. I think there's always a chance that things could be fixed, but I think the problem is judging. I feel like the judges don't know exactly what they're really judging on and looking at, and you got them at cage side where I feel like they should be above or looking at a TV where they're actually seeing what's going on. Like you see play-by-play and commentators, they're watching it, but they got a TV right there where they can see everything that's going on. But the judges, they're looking at the fight through a cage. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of small things that they can miss in that time, strikes or anything big. Whereas if they're watching from a TV, which is from a better angle, they can catch everything that's going on. I'd rather have the judges not there, be in like another room with a big TV or a couple of TVs where they can truly see what's going on from
not
better
influenced
angle.
by anything, not influenced by the crowd or anybody.
Yeah, because the crowd could cheer for one guy, boo another, and it could favor somebody and whatnot. I feel like they'd be better doing it that way than they're in person, and they could actually judge it the right way. And I feel like some of these people, like another thing is, of course, they're doing it on boxing accomans instead of like an MMA one. I think one championship is probably the only one that really truly has some sort of judging that is really good because they go by overall rather than just each round. Yeah, but if they're going to go with each round, they need to be able to see everything that's going on. I feel like they don't. So it leaves a lot of error to be made.
My thing was, okay, so the Oliveira situation threw me off when he made his post-fight comments. Like, at first I was like, all right, he got caught. We've seen rear naked chokes that were around the chin and somebody was squeezed so tight it made somebody tap out without being a choke, right? Like, it's possible. It's 100% possible. But my thing that threw me off about him was his post-fight comments, and it could have been the translation, right? If you're looking at it from an honorable point of view, hey, Dana, I did everything you asked me to do. I want my title shot back, my rematch. And
I don't think he said that.
The translation was, I did everything you asked me to do. That was the
there was that, and then all he said was just get me back in there. So to me, I took it as he just wanted another fight, and he just wants to fight in January in Rio de Janeiro. But it wasn't. Okay.
Like I said, if you're taking it the honorable way, you would think, I fought everybody you asked me to fight. I deserve to be back in there, whether the champion or whatever, right? But if you're looking at it as this whole card is suspect, then you kind of look at it, I did everything you asked me to do, which means I did the job, right? And like I said, you look at it from a whole point of view, it hits differently. It definitely hits differently. And I know I might be the outliner on this one. I'm usually the first guy to bash conspiracy theorists, especially when it comes politically. But I saw things this card when you go back and look at it with open eyes of like, okay, now you're looking for the inconsistencies. Now you're looking for what possibly could have been. When you're just watching the fight card live, you're like, oh man, these three weird coincidences all happened back to back, but that's crazy, right? It just happened. But the Peter Yan thing opened up everybody's eyes. The Dillashaw situation opened up everybody's eyes. And for me, I think Dana did know from April. I don't know how he couldn't have. And he didn't want to mess up his co-main event because then all of a sudden he's got to change all these other cards around to reorganize this so they can have this title defense. He didn't want to give Peter Yan another shot. He didn't. Sandhagen's coming off a loss. Like, there's not really anybody lined up, and Merritt won't fight his teammate. So it had to be either Cejudo or Dillashaw. And he wasn't ready to give Cejudo the shot. So I think he did know, and I think he let this fight go with the fact that anything could happen, but he damn well knew that TJ was compromised. And then you look at the main event, a jiu-jitsu guy got tapped out by a wrestler. It's possible, but I just didn't really see that happening. So
it happens a lot.
It happened. Look, everything happens, and I could be completely full of shit right now. But when you put them all together on the same card, and there were a couple other questionable things. Did Carol Rosa beat Landsberg? That was a majority decision. And honestly, I rewatched that fight too, and it was very close. You look at a couple of the other decisions. You look at the way that the Muhammad fight was reffed. Was it an early stoppage? Was it a good stoppage? I do think that was a good stoppage, but a lot of people call into question because he was stopped while they were still on their feet. But Brady wasn't firing back, so I'll give him credit for that one.
He didn't even know where he was at.
Yeah, no, I think he was out on his feet. I do think that was a good stoppage. But like I said, there's a lot of question marks on this card. And it goes back to the history of this business and the history of this sport when there's been a lot of question marks, especially in the early days. And you go back to Dana White being a boxing guy and the whole Whitey Bulger situation and everything else going back from his days in Boston. I don't put anything out of the realm of the fact that this is a Las Vegas promotion. And there's a lot of question marks. I could be full of shit. This could be just a weird set of coincidences that happened on the same night in a big card outside of the United States. But I don't think any of these things happen on a card in the United States that has an athletic commission watching everything. That's my 2 cents on that. Folks, leave a comment. Battleground loves to get your input, and it's all about the fact that we get to go back and forth and debate stuff. Brandon thinks I'm full of shit. Dan kind of sitting in the middle. What do you think? Conspiracy real or not?
Dan knows what's up. He knows what's up. He's just gonna be nice.
Dan has more conspiracy theories than any of us. Dan's probably sitting there like leading the train on this one. But anyway, let's go ahead and make our picks so we can finish up our business today. We got 2 fight cards to talk about. First off, Bellator is action over in Italy. Bellator 287, Piccolotti versus Barnaoui. Got Fabian Edwards and Charlie Ward. Dan, you're our guest, so I'll let you start off with the picks. Main event, Adam Piccolotti, 13-4 against Mansour Barnaoui, 19-4. Who takes this one?
This was kind of tough for me because, of course, Piccolotti is the Dune fighter here. Both these guys have good backgrounds in grappling. They both have pretty good striking, but they're known for trying to get the fight to the ground. And I'm going to go with the underdog here. I'm going with Barnaoui here. He's had a lot of good fights that, like, on the regional scene and overseas, of course. Makhachev, Gamrot. He had another good one. He lost those, but he lost all those by decision. And he did very well against Makhachev in that stand-up fight, and a lot of his fights he gets down, uses his height, and he can get down and submit his opponents. He likes to use the rear naked choke, and I feel like Piccolotti's a guy that he goes the same way. He tries to get the fight down, ground and pound, looks to take the back or look for submission entries, but there's times where he could get overpowered or guys with a good reach could get to him, and I actually think that Barnaoui's going to win by rear naked choke in round 2.
Brandon, both these guys come in fighting a who's who in this business. Piccolotti's lost to Outlaw and Henderson, but those were both split decision losses. Of course, Barnaoui hasn't lost since 2016. Who takes this one?
So Piccolotti, man, he's kind of been up and down. Saying his last fight was just looking at it was in 2020 against Sydney Outlaw, man. So the dude hasn't fought in over 2 years.
No, he fought Georgie Karakhan in 274.
I'm sorry, but that was it. Became
fought in February.
Yeah,
he got the win.
I mean, for some reason, it doesn't have it up there. It has as not up. I thought it was just no result.
He got the decision win against Gracie on the Gracie Sorley card against Georgie.
Yeah. So basically, but you go back to that, man. The dude's been kind of trading wins and losses because saying he beat Georgia Conner, then he lost to Sydney Outlaw. He beat Jake Smith, but he lost to Benson Henderson. But then before that, he was on a 2-fight win streak. But then he kind of lost, with to Rickles and then Yamauchi. He was on a 2-fight losing streak there. So he's kind of been going back and forth on his wins and losses. While you said, his opponent hasn't lost a fight since 2016. I think I'm actually gonna ride with Dan on this one, man. He is. I think his opponent is the taller guy too, has the reach. So yeah, I'm gonna rock out with Dan. I don't know if it'll be a rear naked choke, but I think his opponent will get the dub.
Well, it's gonna be a clean sweep. I'm taking the Afro Samurai too. On the ground where this fight is probably going to go, he's better. He's simply better on the ground. Scrambles. He's actually fighting closer to home. You can talk about Piccolotti having the Italian roots, but he fights out of California. Yep. Whereas Barnaoui is a French fighter. He's fighting closer to home. And you go back to that Gamrot fight. That was a 3-round battle. Before that, he lost a decision to Whitaker. And then Makhachev and Kevin Lee are back in 12 and 13, but those are both decision losses. He's never been stopped.
That Makhachev one was 5 rounds too.
Oh, really? Because he listed 3, but okay.
Yeah.
I mean, back then, I'll take your word for it with record keeping from back then. But look, this guy's never been stopped, and if it's going to go to the ground, he's going to be a better scrambler. He's only going to a decision 5 times, and he has lost 4 of those. So if it does go to the cards, he could be in trouble. But I don't think it's going to. I think first, second round, I think it's going to be a scramble, and I think he's going to come out on top and get the finish, especially if the bodies are dry and not slippery, like for submissions early in the fight. I think it favors him. Over in the co-main event, we got Fabian Edwards, 10-2, Charlie Ward, 10-4. Brandon, who takes this one?
I'm going with Fabian Edwards, man. I think that Edwards family's on a roll. Like I said, he wants to bounce. He wants to continue his momentum off his knockout of
Of course, the brother of Leon. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think Fabian is going to get the job done and get his hand raised as well.
Dan?
I'm going with Fabian Edwards too. I'm going with him by decision. I think his evasion's really good. It'll be a big play in this fight. You got Charlie Ward, who likes to swing for the fences in his fights a lot of the times, and Fabian Edwards is going to just move around, evade those, try and hit and go. Of course, he might go for a takedown here and there because it's an underrated part of his game. And with a guy like Charlie Ward, who likes to throw those overhand shots, it leaves his body open to be taken down. And I think he could just beat him by decision or possibly just knock him out.
I'm actually going opposite you guys. I'm taking Charlie Ward in this fight. I think Fabian Edwards' his claim to fame is he beat a way over the hill Lyoto Machida. Like Lyoto Machida, every time he gets touched, he drops these days. Like that's not the Lyoto Machida we remember as a UFC light heavyweight champion of the world and middleweight and stuff like that. This is a different Lyoto Machida who's been in the game a little bit too long. Fabian Edwards before that lost to Vanderford, lost to Van Stensis. And then he got the knockout against Machida. Charlie Ward's been fighting in the UFC. He's fought in Bellator for a long time. He's fought a lot heavier competition. And he's on a 3-fight win streak as well. He finishes a lot of opponents, but he also can do his wrestling and ground and pound. So I think Charlie Ward has the experience in this fight, and I think he'll probably win this fight either by decision or stoppage. I think Charlie Ward just has more tools in the bag, so to speak, to borrow a phrase from your good friend Tim Wheaton there. I think he has more tools in the bag. Dan, what's your fight pick of the night that you're looking at?
I got Justin Gonzalez and Andrew Fisher. Both these guys are grapplers. Andrew Fisher is more so like a jiu-jitsu side grappler who looks to get the fight to the ground. He has pretty good ground and pound. He's been shoddy in his career. Lately, he's been a lot better, but he did have that no contest 2 fights ago. But he's all about getting the fight to the ground. His striking is very regular on the feet. But then you got Justin Gonzalez, who likes to get the fight down as well, but he has a little bit better, in my opinion, striking. He's okay with staying and training with people. He only has 1 loss to where Fisher has 8.
Only loss was Aaron Pico. That's not a bad loss.
No, not a bad loss. It was by decision. And that's why I'm going with Justin Gonzalez. I think he's the better prospect here. I don't even know why I'm saying prospect, but you get what I'm saying. Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm going knockout or decision, but I'm going to play it safe and go decision.
Yeah, I mean, he even beat Kai Kamaka. Like, the dude, he has all the tools. Brandon, what's your fight pick of the night?
I, too, am going to say on the main card, I'm going with Saul Rogers versus Tim Wilde, and I'm going with Saul Rogers. Saul Rogers, we've known him since his days from the Ultimate Fighter. Too bad, he couldn't go to the finals because he had his issues over there in England. But I mean, he definitely has found himself a home in Bellator. Picking up some big time wins. And I think he's gonna continue winning here and on this fight against Tim Wilde.
Yeah, he's just got some tough opponents like Mads Burnell, Daniel Weichel. Like he just ran into some killers. So it'll be interesting to see how he bounces back. I'm taking the Luke Trainer fight. Luke Trainer's fighting Alcina. This kid is a guy that's been hyped up for a while, but then he lost his last fight to Biong. I think he's going to bounce back. I don't think anything that Alcina really can do can hurt him. He does have power, but he also gets knocked out as well. So it's like live by the sword, die by the sword. And I think if he goes toe-to-toe with Trainer, he'll probably get put to sleep. Whereas Trainer can finish the fight a couple different ways. So I think Luke Trainer is going to continue up that evolution train, and I think he's going to continue to be one of the guys that Scott Coker's pushing to be one of the next big people in the 205 division. So it'll be interesting to see. Also on that card, before we get out of here and go to UFC, You also got Davey Gallant versus Scatizzi. Speaking of Simon Biong, he's on that card against Zubko. Alfie Davis is going against Goody. The ladies, they got Pinko versus Marcanetto. Yves Landu versus Cagliandro. Van Stesses, who we talked about, he's on the card against Onsichuk. Soli versus Camara. We got Hill versus Fussy. Herrera versus I can't even talk right now. There's so many fighters on this card. Iavine. Burton Nazi versus I'm gonna butcher this one. Kawaza. Any guesses on how to say that name? Then Nasser versus Winslow. Of course, whenever they go overseas, you see a lot of local fighters, a lot of people getting opportunities. There are 16 fights on this card, so long day for Bellator in Italy. I'm sure that card will be broadcast a little bit earlier in the day, so we can see it here in America in prime time. So we'll see, or see prime time versus there and early here. That's what I meant to say. UFC is in action this weekend to round out our show. UFC Fight Night 213, UFC Vegas 63, headlined by Calvin Kattar and Arnold Allen, who me and Brandon just talked about a few weeks ago about the Allen boys and lack of respect. Got Tim Means and Max Griffin and a number of other fights on this card. Brandon, I'll let you start on this one. Main event, Calvin Kattar and Arnold Allen. Who takes this one?
I know Arnold Allen is the favorite. I know we were talking about the Allen boys, but I'm going to go with Calvin Kattar. I know he's a New England guy, hanging out in Massachusetts. But I'm just gonna keep rocking with Calvin Kattar, man. I mean, he had a tough win against Josh Emmett, which of course, you can kind of go with that maybe
tough
Josh
loss.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? A lot of people want to say that Josh Emmett that Josh Emmett took that and everything like that. But yeah, I think I'm gonna keep rocking with Calvin Kattar.
Dan?
Yeah, I'm going with the underdog. I'm going with Calvin Kattar. I looked at Arnold Allen's last fight against Sadiq Yusuf. I felt like Yusuf won that fight. I know Allen.
He fought Dan Hooker last.
I mean, in his Arnold Allen's last fight. I mean, Sadiq's last fight before the guy that took it on last month. But they fought each other. I thought Sadiq Yusuf beat him. He had over 100 strikes on Allen. Allen had half of that, and then he had 2 takedowns. I felt like they used those 2 takedowns and OP'd it to where they gave Allen the win. Kattar's a better striker, I feel like, than Sadiq Yusuf. He uses a lot of body combinations. He attacks the head. He does a lot of movement. He mixes in leg kicks, and he has great cardio. And underrated part of his game is he's very good at defending takedowns. And I think that's going to play a part in this fight. It's going to be 5 rounds. Kattar has a lot of experience in the 5-round fights where Allen doesn't have that experience like he does. And I think it's going to play a big part in it. So that's why I have Kattar by decision.
I'm actually going to take Arnold Allen in this fight. And the only reason being is that I feel like the momentum's just on his side. Like, really, it's a toss-up for me. But, he finished Dan Hooker, which Dan Hooker's been through a lot the last couple of years with COVID and travel, not being home. He's a shell of the fighter he was because of all the stuff he's dealt with. So I don't really put too much stock in finishing Dan Hooker at that point. But he did beat Yusuf. He beat Lentz. He beat Gilbert Melendez. He beat Mads Burnell. He beat Americani. The last time he lost, you have to go all the way back to 2014. In CWFC, like back on the regional scene, back in London and stuff like that. So he's been around for a while, and he's only 28 years old. He's never lost in the UFC, only 1 loss on his record. Calvin's been up and down. He had that very tough loss to Max where he got beat up for 5 rounds. He came out and then tore up Giga. Like, nobody saw that coming. He lit Giga up. And then Josh Emmett and him went back and forth, and it's just a matter of how you score that fight because Josh was in control late. Early, and Calvin was in control late, and it was just really when they switched in the 3rd round, who got that round, right? That was a close fight. That said, I actually thought Calvin won that last fight against Josh Emmett, but I'm not mad at that decision. I'll leave that out of my conspiracy bag this week. But I do think Arnold Allen takes this one just because he's more than just striking. He can wrestle with you. He can get you to the ground and slow down the fight, whereas Calvin just wants to stand and bang with you for 5 rounds. And that can only go so far. And I think Arnold Allen's smart enough not to put himself in that position. So we'll see. It's going to be a good fight, though. Over the co-main event, we got a couple of veterans, Tim Means, Max Payne Griffin. Dan, who takes this one?
This was a fun fight to look at. You got Tim Means. The both of them like to stand up and trade. It's just that they have different styles. You got Max Griffin, who likes to use his legs. He can grapple up with you, but he likes to mix in the hand striking with it. But it's a lot of different style leg kicks that he uses. He likes to use distance. Whereas Tim Means, he likes to push forward, get in your face, and he takes damage to get damage out. He likes to get in those slugfests at times, but then he's very underrated with his grappling at times too, and he likes to get inside and use elbows. I'm going to go Max Griffin here. I think he's going to get it by a knockout because of the fact that Tim Means likes to get inside, and at times he doesn't put his hands up to block his face, and I think he could get caught with the leg kick to the face.
That's tough because that's one thing Tim Means doesn't really get done and stopped a lot. You have to go all the way back to Nico Price in that crazy fight. Brandon, who takes this fight?
Man, it's a tough one too. I mean, they're both coming off losses, so they're both hungry, for a W. Like Dan said, they both can stand and bang with you. Especially Tim Means, man, he got those elbows, dirty birds out here. I know Max Griffin is the favorite, but I'm actually gonna lean towards the underdog, man. I'm gonna go with Tim Means, man. Dirty bird, let's get it going.
Yeah, that's another toss-up for me. I'm going Max Griffin, but my heart isn't into it. I really don't know. Both these guys are getting up there in age. Both those guys have been through wars. Max's two last losses, Neil Magny and Oliveira, were both split decision losses. They weren't even big losses. He rang off 3 in a row in the middle of that, including beating Carlos Condit. Tim Means has been all over the map, but he's more likely to get choked out, and I don't think that's Max Griffin's specialty. But I do think it's going to grind out to a decision. I probably see Max taking this 29-28 or something like that, but I can see his fight going either way on that one. Dan, what is your fight pick for this night?
I got Cody Durden versus the newcomer Carlos Mota. Mota is a fighter, if you know Charles Johnson, who made his debut against Muhammad Makhachev. Mota fought him in LFA on the main event. They had a great fight that he nearly lost at the end. He got clipped. I like Mota in this fight. I think I'm going with the underdog here. Durden likes to grapple up. He did get a knockout in his last fight, but he's predicated on the takedown.
First of all, time out. His knockout was against JP Bays, who's been knocked out by everybody, including his ex-wife now. So I don't take any credit in JP Bays right now.
Well, 2 of those fights are on 1 week's notice, so I can't really go and use that, But Durden is predicated on getting the fight down to the ground, controlling him, look for submissions, or just doing ground and pound. But I like Mota's style in this matchup. Of course, he's very good, aggressive. He has that Muay Thai, Taekwondo, and a BJJ background. He throws a lot of leg kicks to the body, to the leg. He likes to throw the jab, set it up with the hooks. He has a lot of power in his hands. He uses a lot of energy early on. He does tire out a little bit towards the end, but that's in the main event fight when you get to 4 or 5. This is going to be 3 rounds. I feel like he can use that to his advantage. I think he's going to knock out Durden in round 1.
All right. Brandon, what's your fight pick?
I'm going with the Phil Hawes versus Roman Dolidze fight. I'm going with Phil Hawes. Like I said, man, Phil Hawes always has the wrestling to fall back on. But man, you've been watching fights lately, man, he's been letting his hands go a lot. So I mean, he definitely can strike, has the power. So I'm just going with Phil Hawes, man. Just hopefully, he doesn't get caught like how he did last year at MSG.
Are you sure? Because your wife said Phil Hawes has been up and down.
I mean, it has, but like I said, I'm still going with Phil Hawes.
I'm starting to switch. I'm thinking about switching out spouses. I think the expert might be on the other side of the aisle. No, I think Phil Hawes probably will take that fight as well. But that's going to be a fun one. My fight pick is actually another fight right up Brandon's alley, Dustin Jacoby and Khalil Roundtree. And everything is pointing to Dustin Jacoby going through Roundtree because, let's be real, if Roundtree stands and bangs with him, that's Dustin Jacoby's alley. But every part of me is screaming Khalil Roundtree is going to win this fight. He's been pulling out new weapons. Like you saw the Bukakis fight where he TKO'd him via leg kicks. You saw Carl Robertson and him go back and forth when Carl Robinson's probably the better technical kickboxer, but it was Roundtree that got the win in that one. I think Roundtree takes this fight. I think he's got more weapons than Jacoby, who's just going to straight up try to kickbox him. And just, I don't know. I could be wrong on this one, but my gut is telling me Roundtree. Also on this fight card, we got Cortez Acosta undefeated, a heavyweight going against Vanderraa. That's going to be a banger. Friend versus Gore. We got Arlovsky versus Rogério de Lima. Holmes versus Young Park. We got Chase Hooper versus Garcia. Dan, any other fights on that card kind of stand out to you?
I like the Fran Gore fight, but I also like the one that you just said. I like the Garcia Hooper. I want to see how Hooper does with the guy like Garcia. He does have a little bit of grappling, but Garcia is a guy that can knock you out. I want to see if Hooper can avoid those knockout shots early, if he could get him down and choke him out.
Look, he had a couple losses. He bounced back with a couple wins, including looking really good his last fight. Yeah. Brandon, anything else stand out to you on that card?
Nah, yeah, just like what Dan said, I'm looking forward to seeing a Chase Hooper's growth, into the sport. Like I said, he has been looking good his last couple of outings. So let's just see how he keeps on going.
I want to see the old guys bang it out. I want to see Arlovsky and Rogério de Lima. I want to see who falls on that one. So that's that. Ladies and gentlemen, check out everything Dan's doing over on Cage My IQ. Of course, the link will be in the show notes. Dan, I appreciate you taking the time and joining us today to help break down all the crazy stuff that happened last weekend and talk about the fights going on this weekend. Of course, Brandon, you can find right here, as well as Kicking It. Kicking It's back next week, right?
Yep.
All right, so check out that early next week. Dan, any final thoughts?
I'm just looking forward to see this fight. And, of course, we got another fight night coming up next week. Sucks that we lost the main event, but we have a very good women's fight that's going to be taking place of it. So,
you got any cool interviews people need to check out on your channel right now? I know you've been doing a lot of them.
Yeah, I just did Parker Porter. Just put that out. Great guy. He actually worked with a little bit with Calvin Cater, so it gave me a little bit of insight off camera about working with him and Rob Font. And then I got a couple coming up. I'm waiting on doing Chris Barnett. And then Chase Owens of New Japan Pro Wrestling.
Nice. Brandon, any final thoughts this week?
Yeah, Dan, stop sleeping on Bellator, man. Start watching it. Don't just be a UFC guy, all right? Remember, you're supposed to be an MMA guy.
I do want to say one thing we didn't talk about earlier. One on Prime 3. John
Lineker missing weight, as usual.
John Lineker missed weight, and then the fight got called to a no contest because of a groin shot. That was the biggest shit show. That was the last thing.
I watched it live, and it wasn't even that bad.
Oh, I thought it was pretty bad. Like he got caught.
No, I'm saying it wasn't that bad. No, I'm saying it wasn't that bad of a shot.
I thought it was. I think he got hit hard in the nuts. That was a knee right to the.
I don't think if it's a knee shot where it puts you down for 10 minutes.
I think Lineker was looking for a way out. I agree with you, but everything from the weight cut being bad to him vacating his title, no matter what, that's a whole shit show that one did not want. They had two good Prime events going into that.
If you listen to Mike, then what he's saying is that the fix was in on that fight too.
It might have been.
That probably would have been the fight to say it would be, because he did it when he was getting beat. That's when Andrade took over. I thought he was going for the finish.
You're gonna act like one doesn't change the rules every now and then.
I'm not saying. Hey, I'm just going by the theme of the show. You know,
you remember Eddie Alvarez's first fight?
I'm just going by the theme of the show. I'm just going by the theme of the show. The fix is in.
One is not immune to doing things behind the scenes, just like PFL changed the Fabricio Verdum result. Like things happen. Ladies and gentlemen, leave a comment. A lot happened on this episode. I appreciate y'all tuning in. For Dan Bakley, we appreciate you having on. The Mechanic and I will be back next week. This is Art of MMA. We're out.